Hi, I'm Deputy Stan Baker from the Diocese of Vermont, from Deacon of the Cathedral. It's wonderful to be here in Salt Lake City. It's also very tiring. We work hard. We have things early in the morning. My committee meetings start at 7:30 every morning. Then we have committee meetings often into the evening. Then there has to be time to touch base and enjoy our friends and make new acquaintances. General Convention is a place of signs and placards and wristbands and buttons, and people just get more and more during the week, but they stand for important things, and I'll show you some of them in a minute. This has been a week for me. I've described this as my week of tears. Tears of joy, tears of grief, tears of excitement, tears of anticipation, and tears of connection. We're here in Utah, which is the Beehive State, and this morning we went with the bishops on a walk to end gun violence. And I actually don't have that button. I left it in my room, but that's all right. Is this it? Yes, this is the button on ending gun violence. At 7:15 this morning, we met the bishops, and I think many hundreds of people, to have a walk throughout Salt Lake City protesting gun violence and asking for background checks. At the end of that, I was sitting with our deputy, Nancy Gordon, getting a little bit of rest, and I sat by a planter full of lavender, and the lavender was full of bees, and it was so wonderful. I had some tears of appreciation for Mother Nature, just seeing those bees on the bees on the lavender. I have bought a mug too that has a bee on it, which I love, and I want to bring one back to one of my beekeeper friends in Vermont. Then I had tears of connection and support when a Native American man this morning read the epistle during our wonderful Sunday worship, and he stuttered, but he went bravely on, and somehow that brought tears to my eyes, just his bravery and his presence. And then, of course, we had tears of celebration when the Right Reverend Michael Curry was elected as our new presiding bishop, the first African-American presiding bishop in the history of the Episcopal Church. And those tears turned to tears of awe when he entered the House of Deputies. We all rose and we sang and we clapped, and then he gave us a very inspiring speech. He'll be a real evangelist for the Episcopal Church, not just here, but I think for Episcopalians in Africa, or Anglicans in Africa who are trying to understand our church. I think that he can speak to them, not so much because of his color, but because of his preaching style, which is big and bold and exciting. I had tears of grief over the murders in South Carolina, as we all did here at the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And many, many people have buttons or signs that say Black Lives Matter. And if you're on the floor of the House of Deputies, these are everywhere. They're on placards and poles and t-shirts. So this is another one of the placards and the buttons of General Convention. I was also moved in that Black Lives Matter by President Barack Obama's speech and his singing of Amazing Grace, and I'm so glad to see him claiming his power. Then this morning at our General Convention Eucharist, again, the outgoing presiding bishop, Catherine Jeffords Shorey, gave the most rousing sermon I've ever heard her give. And it was about Jairus' daughter getting up, and she started the sermon with, "Get up, old girl," meaning our church, and people were just standing in the aisles with her excitement about the future of our church as we claim ourselves as a church of diversity, a church of faith, a church of grace, and a church that embraces everyone. On the same way, I experienced tears of grief and exhaustion from somebody. I had the privilege right after worship today. Anne Brown asked me to meet with a woman from the Church of England who is an evangelical and was very, very homophobic, and then came out as a lesbian. And she sort of has that sense of being Paul the Apostle, who discriminated against and did violence against the Christians and then became a Christian. She had tears over her worry about LGBT people in Africa and in England and elsewhere. Watching the progress we've made here, it was both exciting to her and a little scary in terms of the pace that we're going at. But we reminded her we've been doing this for 40 years. It's not a new thing. But her tears were very moving. Then this week, the Supreme Court decision brought me to tears for a couple of reasons. Here's a poster that came out from Integrity USA, Supreme Court rules, love wins. And this is very special because Tom Little has signed it and I've signed it. And Tom, as those of you who don't know, Tom Little was the head of the House Judiciary Committee in Vermont, and he's one of our deputation and also a chancellor. He sits up on the dais. And he was head of the Judiciary Committee, and I was one of the plaintiffs in the Baker case. So he and I are going to each take one of these with our double signatures on it. That was so profoundly celebrated here, and I found out when I was in my committee, legislative committee on marriage, where I'm vice chair, and we were talking about marriage in the Episcopal Church, and somebody in the gallery said, which they don't usually do because they're not supposed to talk to us, but we let him talk. He told us the Supreme Court had ruled, and we all just broke into tears and hugged each other, and our chair, wonderful man Brian Baker from Sacramento, the dean of the cathedral there, adjourned our meeting. I got to go and call Peter back in Vermont and cried with him on the phone and tried to reach out through the phone wires and hug him. Then I took calls from reporters in Vermont and in Utah just because of my role in marriage in Vermont, and then went on Facebook, and it was so exciting to see picture after picture after picture of gay couples and their weddings from as far ago as mine and Peter's back in our civil union back in 2000, our wedding in 2010, and they're just picture after picture, and that sense of love. I wrote on my Facebook, I said, it's the first time I've truly experienced and understood tears of joy, because I could not contain myself, and those tears kept coming back all week. I felt connected to people in Vermont. I missed you all because I wanted to be with you celebrating this Supreme Court decision, but I got as close as I could. And then seeing, this is not really about convention, but it feels like it is because it all got intertwined. Seeing pictures of the White House being lit up with rainbow colors and the Empire State Building and the Golden Gate Bridge just also brought tears to my eyes. And I felt there was a national outpouring of love. And again, Barack Obama spoke about the decision. And one of the things that was also tear-inducing was the language of the Supreme Court decision itself. The last paragraph, if any of you haven't read it, read it, because it is a wonderful definition of marriage. We actually read it in our legislative committee on marriage because we're thinking about what is marriage, how do we open marriage to everyone. One last thing before I say goodbye to you and go off to our provincial caucus, which is happening in just a few minutes. We meet as a province, which is all of New England. We have to elect some people to the nominating committee for the presiding bishop, which may sound strange because we just elected one, but should anything happen to Michael Curry, God forbid, and I don't think it will, that committee meets to nominate again. But one last thing, this is a very near and dear button to me. This says AED, and it looks sort of like one of those heart defibrillators. AED stands for the Association of Episcopal Deacons, and what it says is Episcopal Deacons Shocking the Church into Action. And as you all know, I'm one of your deacons, and I believe in both the servant part of deacon and the leader part of deacon. And there's a much larger deacon's presence here than ever before. We have 36 deacons, I believe, on the House of Deputies floor. There are 50 plus deacons here helping with liturgy, personing the deacon's booth, and for the first time, the deacons are taking a stand on various pieces of legislation and supporting various pieces and sending people to monitor those committees. So I'm proud to be a deacon, and I'm proud of the presence. I'm proud to be a Vermonter, especially considering our role in opening marriage up to people. I'm proud to be an Episcopalian, and I'm proud to be a member of the Diocese of Vermont. And just one more thing, I am so proud of our bishop. We don't in Vermont quite understand the role he has in the College of Bishops, in the House of Bishops. He's highly respected. People listen to him, and he has been able to lead the way for other bishops toward full inclusion, not just for gay people, but also for people of color. He is a real voice here in the Episcopal Church, so I am very proud. I'm not crying now, but thank you for listening.